How do the tank levels work in Super Mario 3D World? So Bowser's army has always had a wide variety of destructive vehicles at its disposal. Quite honestly, I'm not entirely sure why. I mean, all of it seems super useless as one dude can just waltz right through it all with relative ease. Not only that, but there's never really an opposing side. Sure, there are people being attacked, but there isn't ever a rival force that is bringing their machines of destruction to the front line to fend off Bowser. It's always a one-sided war, and Bowser's entire army somehow gets stopped because one red-capped weirdo just decided he was going to run through a war zone. Bowser has giant wooden warships that float through the sky, but most notable to me is the entire division down on the ground that is combing over the countryside. In World 8, in Super Mario Bros. 3, there are a few tank levels where extremely large war machines are marching forward past Mario. Surely, they can't all be here just to stop one fellow. These are some of the most depressing and difficult levels in the game, and they sort of felt out of place to me. Fast forward to Super Mario 3D World though, and we come face to face with tanks once again. This time, they're a bit more colorful and chipper. Coming from 2D to 3D though, just how do these tank worlds work from a game design perspective? Let's break down the level, shall we? Let's shoot on over to World 2 now in Super Mario 3D World. When you make it to the castle area in the second world, you're in for a pleasant surprise, because it's comprised of an army marching through the streets of a castle town. Tanks and all. You press onward and eventually gain the power of a tank yourself, and the street you're traveling on curves backwards and then eventually proceeds forward. Eventually you come to the end and the level comes to a halt. You enter a pipe, defeat Boom Boom, and complete the castle. Okay, so let's talk about this tank level design because it's actually quite interesting. Now this level is an auto-scroller level, meaning if you don't hurry up and move, you'll essentially die if you go off camera. This always keeps you moving. But the truth about this level is that it's actually the camera itself that kills you, not some invisible death plane just outside the camera's view. The game checks to see if Mario is within the camera's visible range, and if he isn't for a set period of time, it will instantly kill the player. But let's mess with this, because I've always wanted to know what this whole level looks like. So if we invert the camera's movement on the stage, we'll now be able to travel with the army behind where the player starts. It feels really weird doing this, but it's not as strange as what it leads to. I'm not surprised that the level itself ends, but the glowing horizon light effect at the end of the path is kind of neat. This is just a result of the game's default lighting system trying to react with the edge of the world, or at least according to my understanding. But it's cool. If we walk off this, we of course die, because there isn't any more ground. But what about the army? Does the army just fall off the cliff too? So I booted the level back up, and this time marched with the army to the edge of the map. And the soldiers just marched out over the void. Fearing for my life, I decided to jump onto the tank behind them in hopes that it would defy gravity too. And before I knew it, I was riding out beyond the level into the void. I had no idea how long this was going to go on for, but when I readjusted the camera, I made sure not to kill Mario in the process. So it turns out, all these tanks only move a set distance. Everything moves just enough so that the back end of the line moves away from when the level turns. What's interesting though, is if the marching enemies reach the end of the path and move off camera, even for a moment, they'll turn around in the opposite direction to face Mario. So here Mario was, out in the middle of nowhere, floating on a tank in the sky. I was thinking that I could possibly make it back to land safely if I long jumped to the next tank, but I unfortunately died. But now, let's go ahead and check out the other side of this tank line. If we make it to the transition point in the level, we'll be able to see the other tanks move away. But up top near the piranha plants, we'll see the other tanks driving forward. So the thing is, due to how the camera normally moves, we can never actually see what happens here. Do they turn and follow the other tanks? Well, no. They just drive straight through the wall. Now, I wasn't surprised by this, since it doesn't make sense to make them turn. But I was a bit surprised that even the marching enemies ignored the collision and marched through the wall as well. The caravan of war machines stopped not long after this though, because at this moment, the player would have normally made it to the end of the level. You then go down the pipe. So I moved across this vehicle pileup to make my way to the end of the stage. This is what the level looks like beyond the tanks. It just continues on for a bit before it is cut off. But let's take a look at this level through a different view now. So this level is actually called Killer Tank Stage in the game files, and it's a pretty long stage. At the end of the level where the pipe is, if you were to keep heading beyond that area and out to the skybox, you'd find the isolated room where the Boom Boom boss fight is. And past that, even farther away, you'll find the castle area at the end of the level. Now, one of the most important things in this level are these boxes you see with the blue lines between them. These are called rails, or sometimes called paths in other game engines. These lines determine almost everything about this level. One set of paths controls your camera, and the other paths keep all the other objects coming towards you, from point A to point B. So if we manipulate these, the game will make everything in this level behave differently. So let's just alter their vertical spacing by moving each point in the opposite direction. We'll also mess with the individual tanks too. making some small, rotating others, flipping some upside down, and making some huge. And if we boot up the level, oh, that's interesting, but it makes sense. So the changes we made to the rails actually did the opposite of what I initially thought they'd do. So everything we tweaked has now been put underground, and it is slowly rising up. Since we made similar changes to the other half of the level, the results are very similar. Going back to the start, if we move the camera behind the level, you can see all the chaos we cooked up underground. It's definitely a strange sight. So this time we'll flip the rail positions, and the opposite will happen. The barrage of tanks and soldiers are now in the air following the new path that was outlined for them. I wasn't able to make it up top on my first run-through of the first section, but in the second half I did. When I went back to the start of the level, I decided to board the super small tank and just have a look around. It's definitely a really bizarre sight, seeing all this stuff fly through the castle streets. I decided to continue forward, but my trip was cut short when the upside-down tank pushed me through the floor, killing Mario as he fell off the stage. It's neat, climbing on top of the rotated tanks and sliding off them though. But as you can see, and as I mentioned earlier, basically any changes we make to this stage are still controlled by those pathways. It's like everything is in a box and just moves along with it. Sometimes this is called parenting, with the idea that anything defined as a child will follow the parent. The parenting, or grouping of assets, is what keeps everything essentially following the leader, and this level is all about that. So hopefully you learned something new about the tank levels in Super Mario 3D World today. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you all soon in my next video. Cheers!